You missed the classics from the 80s and 90s? Are you curious about what all the hype was about? Or do you just love discovering great movies that you never knew existed? Then you're in the right place. I'm Jay, and this is Back to the Flix, a film nostalgia channel that's dedicated to 80s and 90s movies where classics were born. Before the 1980s, vampire movies were usually portrayed the same way. Aristocratic gothic figures hiding away in castles, mysterious predators straight out of the old world folklore. But once the 80s rolled around, filmmakers started reinventing vampires entirely. Suddenly, they weren't trapped in castles anymore. They were roaming the highway, living in nightclubs, and even blending into modern society. And in 1987, one movie pushed that idea even further. Instead of ancient nobles in capes, these vampires were leather-clad bikers tearing through the neon-lit California boardwalk. A movie that mixed horror, rock and roll, and pure 80s style into one of the most iconic vampire movies of the decade. Today, I'm reviewing Joel Schumacher's The Lost Boys. So grab your popcorn, your snacks, and your drink, and let's get back to the flicks.
Let's take a trip down memory lane. So hop in the whip, let's ride the wave. Destination set where classics were born. So kick up your feet and grab the popcorn. Blockbuster movies that swept the nation. Hit the like, subscribe, and notification.
Lost Boys opens with a sweeping aerial shot over the Santa Carla boardwalk at night. The carnival is alive with motion. Neon lights flash, rides spin over the beach, and crowds move through the games and arcades that line the pier. The camera slowly pushes in towards one of the rides. A carousel spinning under the light, but the mood shifts quickly. A group of older teens begins causing trouble with another group, and it doesn't take long before carnival security steps in. The guard moves in fast, grabbing one of the boys and breaking up the confrontation before it can escalate. It's clear this isn't the first time that they've dealt with him. With surprisingly little resistance, the group backs off. Later that night, the carnival sits empty. The lights are off and the rides are quiet, and the same security guard from earlier walks alone through the dark parking area towards his vehicle. There isn't another person in sight. As he approaches his car, the film suddenly shifts perspective. We see him from above, as if something unseen is watching him. The guard senses it. He looks up. Fear hits his face instantly. He breaks into a run, scrambling towards the driver's side door, fumbling for the handle. But before he can even open it, something grabs him. His body is violently lifted into the air. The car door ripped clean off the hinges in the struggle. His screams echo across the empty carnival. Then they fade away into darkness. The next morning, the tone shifts completely. Lucy Emerson arrives in town with her two sons, Michael and Sam. The desolate boardwalk from the night before is now packed with life. Arcades buzz with activity and the beach is full of people. The streets are filled with a colorful mix of locals, tourists, bikers, and performers. Santa Carla looks like the perfect California beach town. Lucy and the boys soon arrive at the house of her father. The greeting is a little awkward at first, but Grandpa quickly lays down the basic rules of the house and welcomes them in. And just like that, the Emerson family begins settling into their new life in Santa Carla, a town that seems vibrant and exciting on the surface, but clearly has something much darker hiding just beneath it. Right from the opening scene, this movie does something really smart. It shows us Santa Carla in two completely different moods. At night, the boardwalk is mysterious and dangerous, and yet still filled with a lot of excitement. But in the morning, it looks like the perfect beach destination, the whole California carnival vibe. And for those who are viewing this movie for the very first time, it does a great job at not showing exactly who the attackers are, which sets up the movie for a good reveal later on. And even though at this point we know that they're vampires, not seeing them doing the attacking still leaves a lot of room for speculation. And the camera work and the sound effects from that POV lets us know exactly whose perspective we're seeing from, even though we don't know who they are exactly. And that mystery is what pulls us in deeper from the beginning. You could be flipping through the channels and see this movie on and be like, okay, what's this? I'm interested now. And that's why Schumacher jumped into the story like this. He wanted to grab you and pull you in. As night falls, the energy of Santa Carla returns yet again, but in this form, there's a full rock concert blasting across the beach. Music echoes through the crowds as hundreds of people gather near the stage. The carnival lights flashing behind them and the ocean just beyond. Michael and Sam amongst them move through the packed crowd, taking in the scene. It doesn't take Michael long before he notices a beautiful young lady standing out from the rest of the crowd. Calm, mysterious, almost detached from the chaos of the concert around her. Michael starts making his way through the crowd towards her, trying to close the distance before she disappears. Meanwhile, his mother Lucy is exploring the town. She wanders into a nearby video rental store after trying to help a little boy find his parents. Inside, she meets Max, the shop owner, a quiet, polite man who seems immediately interested in helping her settle into the area. Their conversation is friendly and relaxed, and before long, Max even offers Lucy a job at the store. Back outside, the crowded strip, Michael continues searching for the girl, but Sam's attentions is already drifted somewhere else. He spots a comic book store and decides to break away from his brother. Inside the shop, he meets two brothers running the place, Edgar and Alan Frog. The brothers take their comic books very seriously, especially one category in particular, vampire stories. They warn Sam that Santa Carla isn't exactly what it looks like on the surface, and according to them, the town has a serious vampire problem. They suggest he might want to brush up on some vampire literature just in case. Back outside, Michael finally catches up to the girl, but he's too late. She's already climbed onto the back of a motorcycle of one of the bikers we saw from the group the night before. The bikes roar to life and the gang pulls away down the strip, disappearing into the night before Michael can even say a word. Later that night, the film cuts away from the boardwalk to a quieter stretch of road. Two people from the carousal confrontation from the day before sit in a parked car. The guy is clearly hoping the night will go in his favor. The girl has other ideas, but the moment doesn't last long, and without warning, something crashes down onto the vehicle. The entire roof of the car is violently ripped away. Before the couple can even react, they're dragged screaming out of the vehicle, pulled upward into the darkness. Just like the opening attack, we never see the attackers, but the result is unmistakable. This sequence does a lot of setup without slowing down the pace of the movie at all. We're getting key elements of the story that we can later put together like a well laid out puzzle. There's an unseen magnetism that's pulling everybody together from different perspectives. Mom Lucy is trying to find some normalcy. Sam seems to be keeping up to his normal routine and ends up meeting the Frog brothers, who actually give our family their first clue that something outside of the norm is happening. And Michael's magnetism is a direct attraction towards this woman, who we now see is already affiliated with the biker group. And looking how she looks, you can tell that that's no deterrent for Michael. And after all that, the movie reinforces the danger again with another attack. Same sound effects, same perspective, same mystery. We don't yet know who is exactly attacking these people. Sometimes a great part of storytelling is letting our minds fill in the rest. And that's something a lot of movies of the 80s and 90s did very well. And to be honest, it typically wasn't a story-based element. It was primarily due to budget. But still to this day, that's why a lot of those movies stand out, because we're allowed to make them what we want them to be. The next morning, Sam heads back to the comic book store to talk to the Frog brothers. They don't waste much time in repeating their warning. To them, Santa Carla isn't just a strange town. It's a town that's overrun by vampires. They explain it with complete confidence, insisting the city is practically flooded with them, and that Sam should start taking the idea a lot more seriously. This isn't a comic book fantasy, this is survival advice. Meanwhile, Michael has something else on his mind. After the night before, he's convinced that the mysterious girl he saw might be into a certain look, so he decides to upgrade his wardrobe, picking up a leather jacket that feels a lot closer to the style of the biker gang that caught his attention. Not long after, he runs into her again. This time, they finally talk. She introduces herself as Star, and the two share a brief conversation. Michael quickly asks if she'd like to grab something to eat, but before the moment can go any further, the leader of the gang steps in. His name is David. He doesn't say much. He simply tells Michael to follow him. Caught somewhere between curiosity and peer pressure, Michael agrees and rides out with the group, down the beach and up into the hills outside of town. David begins pushing Michael almost immediately. They speed alongside the cliffs overlooking the ocean, taking risks that make it clear that David is testing how far Michael is willing to go. Eventually, the ride leads them to their hangout, an abandoned resort that collapsed into the hillside after a massive earthquake years earlier. The place is half buried in earth, covered in graffiti, broken furniture, and pieces of past scattered throughout the ruin. This has clearly been their hideout for a long time. After playing mind games on him, they offer Michael a bottle. They tell him to drink, and the pressure of the moment hangs in the air. Michael gives in and takes a sip. Soon after, the group heads back out into the night and arrives at the railroad bridge crossing high above a fog-filled ravine. David dares everyone to climb underneath the bridge and hang from the metal structure. As a train goes by overhead, one by one, the others drop down into the fog below. Michael holds on as long as he can, but eventually, he loses his grip. He falls into the thick fog beneath the bridge. The next morning, Michael wakes up in his own bed with no idea how he got there. The entire night feels like a blur. Before he realizes it, he slept through the entire day. When he wakes up that evening, something feels different. The darkness seems to pull at him. His senses feel sharper, his thoughts feel heavier, and his body starts reacting in ways he doesn't understand. At one point, his body even begins to hover. Panicked and confused, Michael makes his way to Sam's room from the outside window, begging his brother to let him in. Once inside, he makes Sam promise not to tell anyone what's happening to him, because whatever happened the night before, Michael knows that something has changed. And this is where the reality starts to hit for our family. This section of the movie is where the real transformation starts. David isn't just testing Michael, he's trying to recruit him. Once the pressure is applied, it's never let up. And up until the point that Michael actually starts to float, we don't really see anything supernatural, just some young adults living a very chaotic and reckless lifestyle. And Michael isn't chasing danger, he's chasing Star. Even though he doesn't necessarily like this group, he still is somewhat craving the feeling of being accepted by them. And as soon as he drinks from that bottle, that's the line he crossed. Because from that point on, he's just not hanging out with the lost boys, he's becoming one of them. And Sam gets the unfortunate validation that he's been told about, and it hits closer to home than he wanted it to. When he sees his brother floating outside that window, it could mean only one thing. Michael is now a creature of the night. Later, Lucy is about to meet Max at the restaurant for their date. Just when she's getting ready to walk through the door, she gets a call from Sam that sends her rushing back home. When she arrives, she immediately starts asking questions, worried that something might be wrong. But Sam sticks to the promise he made Michael and tells his mother that everything was fine. Meanwhile, Michael quietly slips out of the house and climbs onto his bike, heading back out to the night. He rides back towards the hills and returns to the hideout. Inside the abandoned resort, he reconnects with Star. The two share a quiet moment together away from the rest of the group, and for a brief moment, it feels like Michael might be able to hold on to something normal in the middle of everything happening around him. Before long, the night fades towards morning. The film cuts to an aerial view over the hideout as daylight approaches. From above, the place looks empty, and when Michael wakes up next to Star, something else has changed. The wound that he had on his left hand is completely gone. The injury has healed overnight. Meanwhile, Lucy decides to apologize to Max for missing their date the night before. She makes her way up onto his property, but before she can even reach the door, his large dog suddenly charges towards her. The animal aggressively chases her off the property, nearly tearing into her leg before she can escape. Sam pulls her away from a potential gruesome injury. Later, Sam returns to the comic book shop and tells Edgar and Alan about the incident. The Frog brothers immediately latch into the idea. To them, the explanation is obvious. If Max has a dog like that, they say, it might not just be a dog, it could be a hellhound. And if that's true, Max could be the head vampire. That puzzle is really beginning to come together now. On one side, you've got Michael going through a serious change. His sensitivity to sunlight and his wounds healing overnight. And something keeps pulling him back towards that hideout. And it's not just Star. His transformation is underway. And now the movie is starting to do something clever with Max. Between the dog attack and the Frog brothers jumping straight to the hellhound theory, the movie starts steering the audience to the idea that Max might be the lead vampire. And honestly, if you're watching for the first time, this makes sense. So now we're juggling multiple scenarios. And this is exactly what the movie wants us right now. Questioning everything, because the next sequence is where the plan to expose the lead vampire starts to take shape. As Michael prepares to head out again, Max shows up to the house with flowers for Lucy. With a quick introduction, Michael invites him inside, but Sam has already been thinking ahead. Max isn't the only one that's been invited over for dinner. Sam invites the Frog brothers over as well, and together they begin putting their plan into motion. One by one, they run through every vampire test they know: garlic, holy water, mirrors, but Max passes every single one of the tests. After enduring the awkward interrogation long enough, Max decides that he's had enough of the evening. He politely ends the visit and leaves. Later that night, Michael meets back up with David and the rest of the gang on the boardwalk. David gives him a clear message. If Michael ever wants to see Star again, he needs to come with them. The group rides out, eventually stopping at a beach where a group of teenagers is gathered around a bonfire, drinking and partying. At first, it looks like a typical late-night beach hangout, but this is where Michael finally sees the truth. One by one, the gang reveals what they really are: vampire. And within moments, the entire beach turns to chaos. The Lost Boys attack the group around the fire, slaughtering them one after another in the darkness. Michael watches in horror as the reality of the situation becomes even clearer. This isn't a gang, this is a pack of predators. But when the moment comes for him to join in, he refuses. Well, I guess Sam, Edgar, and Alan had it wrong, right? This section of the movie does two very important things. It sets up Max as a suspect, and then it exonerates him. He's off the hook free and clear. This part was set up to make it seem like the Frog brothers were actually onto something here. And with the passing of the tests, all of their suspicions go out the window. And at the same time, across town is building Michael's internal conflict and transforming it into an external one. Because once he actually witnesses that beach massacre, his hopes of hanging out with this group just collapse. The Lost Boys have gone from an unruly biker gang to a group of bloodthirsty mass murderers. And now that he knows exactly what they are, the question is he going to turn into one of them, or is he going to fight against it? After witnessing the massacre on the beach, Michael returns home shaken. He makes his way to Sam's room and finally tells his brother the truth. But Sam already understands what's happening. After everything he's learned from the Frog brothers, Sam knows exactly what Michael is becoming: a half vampire. But according to the vampire rules the Frog brothers explained, there's still a way to stop the transformation. If they can destroy the head vampire responsible for turning Michael before he feeds, the curse should be broken. Before they can even fully figure out a plan, something unexpected happens. Star appears outside the window, calling for him. Moments later, she rises into the view, floating up towards the window. She's also a half vampire. The next next morning, Sam calls Edgar and Alan and tells them it's time to act. The Frog brothers arrive, ready for a hunt. They lay out a plan and go straight to the source, the vampire's hideout. Michael joins them, and the group piles into Grandpa's car, heading up towards the abandoned resort. Inside the ruined structure, they begin searching through the debris and collapsed rooms. Eventually, they find what they're looking for, the vampire's resting place. A cavernous room that acts like one large coffin for the group. Without hesitation, the Frog brothers drive a wooden stake straight into the chest of one of the sleeping vampires. The reaction is immediate and violent. The vampire explodes into shrieks and thrashes as thick ooze sprays everywhere. It's chaotic, loud, and impossible to ignore, and the noise wakes the others. The remaining vampires begin moving through the darkness towards them. Realizing they've just triggered something much bigger, Sam, Edgar, and Alan make a run for it. As they scramble to escape into the daylight, David nearly catches Sam, grabbing onto his leg and trying to drag him back into the shadows. But the boys fight back, pulling David's hand into the sunlight. The light burns him instantly, forcing him to let go. The group escapes and piles into the car. Sam, the Frog brothers, Michael Starr, and a young boy rush back towards the house, because now they know something important. They didn't kill the head vampire, which means the real fight is still to come.
Yeah, we squabbling now. This is where the movie shifts from a mystery to a straight-on survival horror. Up until this moment, our group is trying to solve a problem. I think that they believe that if they kill one vampire, that the things will start to fall apart. But instead of ending a threat, they poke the hornet's nest. And it's also here where those practical effects starts to come in. And the Flix fam knows what that means for Jay. I'm all in. And that stab to the chest and them getting covered in ooze, it's gross, it's chaotic, it's completely over the top, and it's fantastic. And this is the type of energy that these 80s horror movies was known for. And this scene does a great job in actually setting up the final act, because the Lost Boys are not gonna let this slide. As soon as night comes, retaliation isn't far behind.
With Lucy away on another date with Max, and Grandpa tricked into leaving the house on a supposed date with a female acquaintance, the boys know this may be their only chance to prepare. The night approaches quickly. Sam and the Frog brothers arm themselves with everything they can get their hands on. A bathtub full of garlic and holy water, wooden stakes, every weapon they could think of to fight the vampires. Before long, night fully falls and the Lost Boys awaken. The vampires waste no time. They make their way straight towards the Emerson house, ready for revenge. The attack begins almost immediately. One of the vampires bursts through the fireplace, crashing into the living room and sending ash and debris everywhere, causing the Frog brothers, Star, and the young boy to flee upstairs. But the tension inside the group begins to rise as the Frog brothers decide that any vampire is a threat, including Star. As they start moving towards her, the door suddenly slams shut. One of the vampire gang is already in the room and forces the boys back. A violent struggle breaks out, pushing them into the bathroom. The fight spills across the room until one of the Frog brothers splashes holy water directly into the vampire. The creature screams in agony. Before it can recover, Sam's dog leaps into the fight, knocking the vampire backward into the bathtub. The holy water does its job, and the vampire melts. Suddenly, the house begins to react. Throughout the walls begin to burst as thick red fluid floods through the plumbing, spraying across the floors and walls. Downstairs, Sam finds himself alone in the living room. Another vampire stalks him through the shadows. The creature lunges and Sam fires an arrow. The first shot misses, but the second flies straight and true, and the arrow drives the vampire's body and pins him into the stereo system behind him. Electricity surges through the vampire instantly, and the current tears through his body until his limbs and head violently explode. Upstairs, things are getting worse. The young boy suddenly turns feral, ripping through the mattress as the transformation takes hold. The Frog brothers prepare to destroy him, but Star stops them before they can act. Back downstairs, the final confrontation is underway. Michael and David face each other in the living room. The two launch into a brutal fight, flying across the room and smashing into the furniture and walls. David swoops through the air, striking from every direction as the two slam into the pointed taxidermy mounted around them. The fight becomes a battle for survival. Finally, Michael gains the upper hand. He swings David back towards the mounted antelope display and drives the vampire straight into it. The sharp horns punch through David's chest, pinning him in place. The leader of the Lost Boys has finally been defeated.
The movie isn't holding back right here. This is a full 80s movie spectacle, and this confrontation is some of what makes this movie stands out above the rest. The camera angles, the confrontation, the everyday man standing against the ultimate evil. And when the Frog brothers say that no vampire bites it the same way, the movie gives us exactly what we all wanted. Vampires melting, exploding, chaos and destruction throughout the entire house. And this David versus Michael fight is the showdown that this movie has been building towards. David has been testing Michael's since the moment they met, pushing him further and further into becoming one of the Lost Boys. But even once he gained all of the power and capability of a vampire, it still never changed the person he was at his core. Killing David is the direct rejection to becoming one of the Lost Boys. And I don't know if it's just me, but when David finally gets killed and that light shines on him, seems like he wasn't given an actual chance to truly be innocent. He was forced into this lifestyle for some reason. I don't know if I'm reading into that too much, but that's what I get from that sequence. But now that the Lost Boys are all dead, Michael Starr and the young boy are still half vampires, so the real vampire hasn't yet shown himself. David hangs lifeless where he was impaled, and for a moment, it feels like the nightmare might finally be over. But Michael immediately noticed something important. Nothing has changed, which means one thing: David wasn't the head vampire. Just then, headlights sweep across the front of the house. Outside, Max pulls up in his car, dropping Lucy off after their evening together. The two walk towards the house, unaware of the battle that just took place inside. When they step through the door, they're greeted by total destruction. Furniture overturned, walls splattered, debris scattered everywhere. As Sam tries to explain the chaos to his mother, Max quietly walks past them and moves straight towards David's body. He studies it for a moment, then the truth finally comes out. Max calmly apologizes to Lucy for what his boys have done, because David was never the leader. Max is. He reveals that he's been the head vampire the entire time, and the reason that none of the vampire tests worked earlier is simple. He had already been invited into the house. Once a vampire is invited inside, the rules no longer apply. Max then turns on the group. He easily overpowers Michael and Starr, tossing them aside. When Sam tries to fight back, Max grabs him and holds him hostage. He tells Lucy that if she joins him, everything will be fine. She and her family can be safe as one of his kin. All she has to do is accept what he is. Just then, a loud horn blasts from outside. Before anyone can react, a vehicle crashes straight through the wall of the house. Grandpa barrels into the room in his truck. The wooden fence posts he's been planting in the background throughout the whole movie are hanging out the back of the truck. As the truck plows in, Michael shoves Max directly into the spikes. A sharpened post drives straight through Max's torso, launching him backwards into the fireplace. He explodes in a violent burst of fire and debris. The threat is over. With the head vampire destroyed, the curse breaks. Michael Starr and the young boy are no longer half vampires. The nightmare that began in Santa Carla has finally ended. As everyone has gathered themselves after the chaos, Grandpa calmly walks into the kitchen and grabs a soda. Looking around at the wreck house, he casually delivers the final line. The one thing he never liked about living in Santa Carla was all the vampires. Life lesson: be careful who you invite into your house. Max passed all of the earlier tests because they invited him in. Lesson learned. And there's another point that this movie doesn't directly touch on. Even though you can live a life of eternity, you still want companionship. All Max really wanted was that his boys and her boys come together and live like one big happy family. Is that too wrong? Of course it's wrong, because they was killing people. But anyhow, Grandpa, we need to talk. Throughout this entire movie, you've been watching from the background silently, knowing what's going on and not warning your family. Why? Because maybe they would have thought you were crazy. Fair enough. But your daughter was literally dating someone you knew was a vampire, and you allowed it to happen until the very end. You did come in as a hero, but come on, man. Next time, give us a heads up. And we also don't know if all of the vampires were taken down. That was just Max's group. There could have been quite a few other groups in Santa Carla. We don't know. Maybe we'll never know. The Lost Boys is one of those movies that perfectly captures the spirit of that late 80s cinema. It blends horror, comedy, and that rock and roll attitude into something that still feels unique decades later. Memorable characters, practical effects that still hold up, and a story that never forgets to have fun in its own chaos. From the Santa Carla boardwalk to the final confrontation in the Emerson house, the film keeps the movie energy moving the entire time. And it's easy to see why this film has become one of the favorite cult classics of its era. It's stylish, entertaining, and a great reminder of how creative the genre films were in the 80s. And if you like this review, be sure to check out my others. Hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell, and share this with someone you know who loves retro reviews. Again, I'm Jay, and I'll see you next time when we get back to the flicks.
We're going back to the flicks, rewind and mix 80s flicks, family ties with the Netflix fix. Reliving those days with the little ones amazed in this retro way. Old classics paved the way. Back to the flicks, rewind and mix 80s flicks, family ties with the Netflix fix. Reliving those days with the little ones amazed in this retro way. Old classics paved the way.